Sir, what are the latest news strikes you can see according to your observation?
Thank you so much, Mr. Kanchan. Of course, welcoming all our viewers to the program here today. And today is December 4th. There are some numerous strategic updates that I want to share with our viewers. First off, Steve Witkoff, Special Envoy, and Jared Kushner was in Moscow as of yesterday. And now they are coming back to the U.S. and they shall be meeting in Florida to talk about the Ukraine and the U.S. Negotiation position. And of course, alongside we have other news which include the Chinese are opposing any action that violates the purposes and principles of the UN Charter or infringes on the sovereignty and security of other countries. This is of course regarding the US position and US tensions in the Caribbean according towards Venezuela, according to various media outlets. And of course, in the Middle East, leaders of the Gulf Cooperation Council said that any violation of a member state's sovereignty represents a direct threat to the bloc's collective security, reaffirming their rejection of the use of forces or threats against any GCC country in their final communique at the 46th summit in Manama, Bahrain. These are the latest updates as of today.
Sir, I just want to get your opinion in what does Putin's India visit signal about Moscow's global strategy amid the Ukraine war?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Kanchan. I believe that this is holding some kind of significant importance. I want to begin by saying that way back in 2022, when Russian oil was sanctioned heavily by the Western powers, India became one of the places where Russia could easily export out its natural resources, namely crude oil and if not natural gas. And at this moment, this visit, of course, was planned earlier on in this year, which I understand is important. Immediately after one of the partners, as of recent days, we see United States working with Russia regarding the Russia-Ukraine ceasefire, if not an end cessation to the war. But in relationship to India, immediately after the BRICS summit held earlier this year, we've seen how Donald Trump's administration had hiked up the tariff package for India all the way up to 50%. This is a strategic move in order to cripple the Russian war machine.
Shamsul Alam Pantho, does this visit undermine the existing sanctions regime against Russia?
Thank you so much for the question. I was hearing Ambassador Norman Ford Barnes in his statement, and of course he has a reason to understand where Russia plays into global geopolitics. But as for your question, this would mark the 23rd India-Russia annual summit, and that just shows us how many years they have worked in coordination in understanding various sectors, including defense cooperation, military hardware, energy and trade, economic and industrial ties, and of course global and regional issues. When we talk about this certain relationship between India and Russia, it is definitely strategic. There are no cultural, if not ethnic ties tying these two regions up. However, they do understand the takeaways that working together could definitely benefit the both countries. And as Ambassador Norman Floyd was saying, the Venezuelan aspect is now garnering a lot of media attention. This is because the Treasury Department announced new sanctions targeting key affiliates of the Venezuela-based gang Tren de Aragua for money laundering. This is just another step in the war that US is ramping up towards Venezuela.
Right.
On the other side, we have China coming out opposing the aggression towards Venezuela. We have the Russians coming out in support of the Venezuelans, trying to avoid any kind of escalation.
I want to ask you, can these diplomatic engagements like this, I mean India and Russian engagement, realistically sway the trajectory of the war? Does it mean India is supporting this aggression to Ukraine because India is trying to do business with Russia, where Russia is a war country right this moment?
Thank you for the question. There are certain takeaways that one must consider which side they want to support. For one example, that India heavily relies on crude oil. So it is open to understanding where they can source this from. And if Russia is set to deliver on its promise for cheaper oil alternative, definitely India will take this opportunity. On the other side, Ukraine remains the bread and basket of Europe, and they have a humongous amount of grain exports towards that region, of course outside as well. So one must want to know how they can antagonize this situation and figure out what they can take away from the spoils of war, if you would like to call it. But the gruesomeness of the war has gone down in an immediate effect by U.S. mediation and of course by the representation of the 19-point plan, which was previously known as the 28-point plan. Although it favors Russia, but there are certain elements that Ukraine might want to think. There are certain instances where a top official of the country was being scrutinized for corruption charges. So these are quite so important for Ukrainians to understand. Are they still in the proper leadership?